Welcome to the Canadian Beef Cattle Podcast, presented by the Beef Cattle Research Council, the most popular content from beefresearch.ca, available on the go. This episode is titled Results of the Inaugural Canadian Cow-Calf Survey.
Hi, I'm Tracy Herbert with the Beef Cattle Research Council. We at the BCRC recently took a snapshot of cow-calf production across the country from the 2022 breeding season through to the 2023 weaned calf crop. Thanks to the 600 producers that completed the first ever Canadian cow-calf survey, information is now available on production practices that have been adopted by cow-calf producers in 9 provinces, with their reasoning and rationale for some practices, as well as performance measures of their herds. That helps the BCRC focus on research and extension strategies, which are funded by the research allocation of your Canadian beef cattle checkoff, to support producers with different types of herds and operations in various regions. The full results, including lots of graphs and tables, are available at beefresearch.ca/survey. Here's a sample of them. When we asked about weaning methods, about 1/3 of respondents said they use fence line separation. 12% use those nose paddles or 2-stage weaning, and 2% rely on natural weaning. Just over half said they use traditional separation to wean their calves. Nearly 60% saw their calves immediately after weaning. 21% use traditional separation to wean because of a lack of time, labor, or infrastructure to do things differently. And about 12% don't see any financial benefit from weaning with other methods. 40% indicated that they have retained ownership of most of their calves after weaning in the last 3 years. And close to 60% of producers who retained ownership did so for more than 4 months. In terms of calf death loss, nationally the death rate of calves within the first 24 hours of life averaged 2.2% for calves born from cows and 3.7% for calves born from heifers in the 2023 calving season. Those numbers are down from what was seen through other surveys in Ontario and Western Canada in 2016 and 2017. Death loss between their first day of life and weaning averaged 2.5% for calves born from cows, and 2.9% for calves born from heifers across Canada. The results also show us how Canadian producers use different approaches to resuscitate unresponsive newborn calves. The most common methods were placing the calf in the recovery position and rubbing it vigorously, with 37% of respondents indicating that they always use those techniques. Next most common was poking straw or a finger in the nose, with 30% of producers indicating they always use those techniques. So hanging a calf upside down to drain fluid from its lungs is a traditional technique, but it's not recommended because it only drains fluid from the calf's stomach, not its lungs. Holding a calf upside down or draping it over a gate or fence also causes the calf's stomach and intestines to squeeze the lungs and diaphragm, making it even harder for the calf to breathe. Our survey results found that 66% of respondents report that they never hang calves upside down for a period of time. And it looks like those numbers are down roughly in terms of the number of people that are hanging calves, because a different survey done in 2017 found that more than 50% of Western Canadian cow-calf operations were still using that technique. You can check out beefresearch.ca/calf911 for videos and guides on how to provide emergency support for distressed newborn calves. We've got new stats on open rates too. And open rates, along with calving interval, often relate to breeding season length, which varied regionally. Alberta and Saskatchewan producers reported shorter breeding lengths for their cows at 80 to 87 days, while Quebec and the Maritimes reported longer breeding seasons of about 131 days. Nationally, the average open rate for cows in 2022 was 7.4%, while the open rate for heifers was 11%. The lowest open rates were reported in Quebec and the Maritimes at 4.1% for cows and 8.1% for heifers. And the highest open rates were reported in Manitoba, with 10% in cows and 13% in heifers. Let's talk about feed and water testing next. Results showed that on average, about 70% of Canadian cow-calf producers lab test their feed, whether occasionally or annually. That's up considerably over the past 5 years or so, because 60% of Western Canadian producers said they were feed testing in 2017, and 34% of Ontario producers reported feed testing in 2016. Of the producers who feed test, whether it be occasionally or annually, nearly half use their lab results to develop rations on their own. More than a third work with a nutritionist, and about 5% use the results with their extension specialist to create rations. 10% of respondents that test their feed do not use their results. So about 30% of producers, cow-calf producers across Canada, reported not using feed testing. And the majority of those who didn't said it's because their cattle appear healthy, so they don't see a need to test. Other significant reasons for not feed testing included a lack of confidence in being able to make or implement plans based on those results, the perceived high cost of feed testing, and uncertainty about how to collect and send feed samples in for analysis. In terms of water, about 38% test their livestock's drinking water one or more times in the past 3 years. Of those who never test their livestock's drinking water, about 20% said it's because they don't see a need to test because their cattle appear healthy. About 6% said they don't test their water because of a lack of confidence in using their test results. And about 5% said that they're uncertain about how to collect and submit water samples to a lab. The survey asked about vaccination too, and it found that vaccination rates in bulls, cows, replacement heifers, and calves varied considerably by disease type and region. The greatest vaccine use was seen for 7, 8, or 9-way Clostridial vaccine administered to calves. Vaccination for reproductive diseases was prevalent at about 70% of cows and replacement heifers, and bovine respiratory disease vaccinations were highly used in all animal categories, with calves showing the highest rate at 73% being vaccinated for BRD. Scours vaccinations and Vibrio and Lepto were less common overall compared to other vaccines. And generally speaking, vaccination rates are highest in Western Canada and lowest in Quebec and the Maritimes. Of the 9% of respondents who did not vaccinate their breeding females for reproductive disease, a third of them said it's because they believe they have a closed herd. The next most popular reason was that they're satisfied with their conception rates, and so they didn't see the need to vaccinate. About 6% noted some barriers, like lacking facilities and labor, and about 3% said that they don't vaccinate because of the expense, and another 3 noted that they don't have access to a veterinarian to develop a herd health program. When we asked how frequently producers consult with a veterinarian on a herd health program, about a third said they do so yearly, and another third said about 2 to 5 times per year. Dart guns and other kinds of remote drug delivery devices are becoming more popular. About 37% of cow-calf producers that responded to our survey use a remote drug delivery device for treatment. About 15% used it fewer than 5 times a year. 10% used it 5 to 10 times per year. And only 7% used it between 11 and 20 times per year. The adoption rate of remote drug delivery devices was higher in the prairie provinces compared to the rest of the country. And for those who use them, the vast majority, 95%, use it to treat foot rot, septic arthritis, and lameness. Pink eye and eye infections were the next most common conditions that were being treated with a remote drug delivery device, and that was at 50%. The use of pain mitigation has gone up substantially. The survey found that pain mitigation during castration was always used by 26% of respondents, while another 20% said they use pain mitigation depending on the age of the animal and the method of castration. More than half of respondents that don't use pain mitigation said it's because their calves are castrated before 3 months of age. For those who dehorn, 47% always use some form of pain mitigation, while 23% said that they use it depending on the age of the animal and the method of dehorning. The majority of respondents, 81%, had more than 3/4 of their calves born pulled. In terms of record keeping, about 80% of respondents rely on paper records. Nearly half use spreadsheets, and about 20% use accounting software. Electronic cattle management software is used by about 20% of respondents, and just a small percentage use other methods, like a purebred association registry or a cell phone app. And about 86% of producers who keep records noted that they do use them for on-farm decision-making. So if you're interested, the BCRC website does have free cow-calf record-keeping courses, as well as resources on all of the other topics mentioned in today's episode at beefresearch.ca. And if you want to compare your operation to averages in your region, have a look at the BCRC's cow-calf production indicators calculator. You can use it to compare 15 of your own production numbers to industry targets and regional benchmarks, which have been informed by the results of this survey. A link to that calculator is in the show notes. So while this national survey provides a helpful snapshot of a recent production year, it's even more useful for us to understand trends and substantial changes in production practices and performance measures over time. And so we're working on that next. By spring of 2025, we'll be done preparing a report on the adoption rates of recommended practices by cow-calf operators in Canada, which will be an updated and similar report to the one that we had published back in 2019. Thanks again to the 600 cow-calf producers who took the time to anonymously share their production information with us through the Canadian Cow-Calf Survey. The BCRC intends to repeat it every 5 years.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. You can find all relevant links and information at beefresearch.ca or in the show notes. The Beef Cattle Research Council is funded by the Canadian Beef Cattle Checkoff and strives for excellence in the production of Canadian beef, cattle, and forage through research, innovation, and extension. Tune in every Tuesday as the Canadian Beef Cattle Podcast delivers straightforward insights, expert information, and a wealth of practical knowledge for Canadian beef producers. Subscribe now.